Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another week of the Lost Sheep Podcast. My name is Cole Bissett, and I am joined here today by
Evan Abear
and
Zario Pengallo.
So, you might be wondering what happened to us last week. To that, I would say that's a great question. Well, last week, we were scheduled to film part 2 of our mailbag episode, and we had about 5 questions left to answer. And then I went to grab the bowl out of Sabin, and there was like 10 more. So we had like 12 questions last week that we had to answer, and so we started to answer them, and the podcast was going great. Had some fun questions, and all of a sudden, there was nothing but black. All good things begin with a black screen. Those of you who know where that comes from, you are legends. But
is that Ready Player One?
no, that's
the Lego Batman movie, bro. Come on,
a bad shout
Never seen
right
it.
there. Anyways, so Nazari's computer died in the middle of the episode, so we probably recorded about 20 minutes of audio maybe before tragedy happened. So we started it back up, put on his camera, and it only picked up one of our mics, and it just wasn't worth posting. So we apologize for that, but we're back this week with better audio, a better sound system, and a foolproof way for the computer not to die. So thank you guys for your patience with us. We hope to do better moving forward. As you all know, we are still humans and have a lot of room to grow. So
that is a fair point, and that'll probably continue throughout the rest of this podcast.
Yeah.
But we hope that y'all subscribe, follow the Lost Sheep Podcast. We are hopefully going to continue get to. By the end of the semester, we'll be around episode 90 plus. So we might not get quite to 100 this semester, but
there's 11 weeks left.
Yeah.
We'll be at 100 before, if we stay consistent throughout the summer, we'll be at 100 the week before my wedding.
oh, that is something to look
Episode
forward
100 wedding special live
to.
stream.
Good.
crazy.
We've got 81 days till my graduation. Evan, how many days till your wedding?
151.
So 2 huge milestones in 2 of our lives. There's nothing super great happening in Cole's life to count down.
400 days.
Woo! 400 and some days till his graduation. But
I was like, 400 days to what?
Yeah, graduation. Yay. Okay. Anyways.
but yeah. So how are you guys' weeks going? What's going on over in the worlds of the A-Bears and the Bissets?
Evan, you want to go first? Well, Evan Johning. I'll go first. My week's insane. So much school. I have so much school. Evan's going to say he has no school, and that's going to frustrate me, but that's okay. I've got a test this week, a test Monday, a 15-page lab report due Monday, another lab that's due Thursday. So I'm just all in on this homework business right now. So trying to get that cranked out. Really good week, Co. Other than that, like, prayer has been good. Been able to kind of jumpstart Spirit and Truth on a different level this semester. We're really excited about it. We got a lot of good things prepared for our team, and including myself. And so that's exciting. Nazario and I actually got invited to go to a retreat in Birmingham and help lead some local high schoolers. So we're really excited to go be a part of that and help with their ministry. So life's been pretty good. What about you, Evan?
Yeah, I'm really glad y'all share your joys with me all the time. So
Glad you share yours with ours too.
You're welcome. You're welcome. When's your retreat?
It's the 25th
Of
February. I have to miss a Spirit and Truth night. It's in a couple weeks.
It's just the 25th of February. It's a Wednesday.
It's a one-day retreat.
5 to 9 p.m. retreat on a Wednesday night.
Do you know who
Wait,
David
5
Calavita
p.m.
is?
to 9 p.m.?
Yeah.
That's weird. David who?
Calavita?
No. Why would I know who that is?
He's a famous Catholic speaker, but he's going to be helping host the retreat. So.
Okay. Well,
It's gonna be a very
don't
cool
forget that
experience
search
for us.
weekend. So,
Yeah.
I have to lead
So,
music for the women's
I'll
retreat that
remember.
weekend.
bro, that's crazy.
I'll never forget that it's
So
that search
I've had
weekend,
pretty good week. It's actually been not as light as Cole was gonna say.
Oh.
I'm not gonna frustrate him, but we are having our first OM test, operations management, for our OM class. But it's like a 2-day thing. He splits it up like we took half the test on Monday, and then we'll take half the test tomorrow. Now I will say it is open internet.
Open internet. That is.
So
You heard that before here first, folks.
it is completely open note, open.
AI
He literally
included.
just said to Google something on the test. So, shout out my boy. But,
Man, grad school, real difficult.
I got an economics test, like a take-home test tonight. It is not open note. It's proctored, lockdown browser.
Take home.
Well, it's online. Like, they don't make us take it in the classroom.
Okay.
But, like, It's been a good week. It's light. Getting pretty into the internship swing of things as they start giving me more information and whatnot. Excited to be in St. Louis the first week. I'm gonna see if there's maybe some cards games I can head out there for.
When are you gonna be there?
How far is St. Louis from where you are at? Long.
Oh yeah, no, it's not close to me.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought. The first week I'm there is like May 18th.
Cool.
Yeah. So the cards should be playing in June.
No, they'll start in the end of March actually, so you'll be good.
Oh, really?
I'm gonna check your schedule right now, see if they're at home.
Oh, cool. I think I already checked. I don't think they are. They may be. 18th. I'm there Monday to Thursday or whatever. Anyway, good week, easy week. But without further ado, let's ask Nazario how his week went.
He was so close to going to the quote right there. Hold up. Let's see. Before I
think of your life
before
right
I
now.
say
calma,
that,
calma.
You're gonna be there until
Yeah, Thursday.
Yeah, so you'll have a game on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. They're playing at home.
Oh, who are they playing?
They're playing the Pirates, so very cheap tickets, $12, and $14 for those 3 days.
Cool. If we're doing nothing, I might go. Or we may go as like a team.
Yeah.
Like that'd
So,
be sick. So
Evan's got, maybe a little date for some sports out there.
yeah, I get to see who DLC play out there in the cards. De La Cruz, Ellie De La Cruz. Did he
No,
get
he plays for
traded?
the Reds. He plays for the Reds.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
who's on the cards anymore?
The best Cardinals player right now, I generally don't think I could name because they just
Okay.
traded Arenado. So
I don't feel bad. I was gonna
But-
say
yeah.
Arenado's not there anymore.
But you could get to watch from the Pirates, Paul Skeens. There you go. That could
Oh
be
yeah,
very exciting.
going
for
to
you.
watch Livy Dunn.
Anyways, my week's been pretty good. What day is it? It's Tuesday, so.
Caroline, don't watch this.
Oh man, that's funny. I'm going home on Thursday for Valentine's Day weekend, so that'll be a lot of fun. Got an exam on Thursday, and then get to head on out. And I think our professor is a social psychologist, and I think he is successfully manipulating the class to, one, be excited to go to class, and two, be excited for exams. So he doesn't take attendance, which basically he's been able to manipulate the class into thinking, oh, I actually enjoy going to class because there's no attendance, yet I still go. And two, he's been calling all of our exam days. He's been like, this is not a stress day. This is a rest day. You just get to come in and collect your check for how hard you've been working. And so I'm pretty sure like everyone in the class is like excited and ready, thinks they're ready for the exam. So we'll see how that goes on Thursday. But it should be a good
Our
time.
lives. It's like
Yeah.
doomsday for me.
Never been fed that. Actually, I have been fed that. So yeah.
It's a good. It works well. It's good quotes, but not quite as good as the quote we have for this week.
Ladies and gentlemen, the quote of the week.
All right, folks. Well, the quote for we're going to call this technically episode 79, even though we recorded episode 79 last week, but it didn't get posted. And this comes from Cole Bissett. So I will let Cole Bissett introduce the quote of the week.
So our quote for this week is from a famous philosopher and writer. His name is Seneca, and the quote goes a little bit like this: "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." Very simple, plain quote. I'll read it one more time for you. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Nazario, since you were so giddy in introducing this and hopping in and switching to our quote section, I just know you have something to say. And your inner psychologist has got to be like absolutely like you got to be like a puppy eyes. I can see you over there. You're just like, oh, please let me say the first thing. So I'm gonna let you say the first thing.
Cole was trying to psychologically manipulate me into being excited
Yeah, exactly.
and going first here. So I will oblige, Cole. I will go first. I'm going to read it back again because that always gives myself time to actually process and think of something to say. From Seneca, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. And I'm very excited to see the different directions that we take this quote. But first things first, what is our imagination and what is reality? Great questions right there. Cole's got that already prepared. So I'll let Cole
What is
answer.
we?
What is we? Imagination. The definition of imagination is a noun, first of all. It is spelled I-M-A-G-I-N-A-T-O. Wow, A-T-I-O-N. I have it right in front of me. The faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses. the ability of the mind to be creative or resourceful, or the part of the mind that imagines things. That last definition isn't very helpful, but the first two are
What about reality? Do you have a definition pulled up for that?
Reality.
So we've just defined imagination, and now we're gonna define reality. Here to really break down this quote.
Reality. The world or the state of things as they actually exist, as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them. The state or quality of having existence or substance.
Yeah. So why do I have Cole do this? Well, actually, this was a very intuitive moment from Cole and I working together right there. But why did I want to define those two things? Well, it's because I want to remember and help us to reflect on what is reality, what is, more importantly, what is truth. And I think that's what matters so much in this quote when we try to relate this to the Christian life. Because, one, we create ideas in our heads. That's what imagination means. Of what we think of the world, what we think the world means, what we think the world is. And then we have this whole other side called the devil and his attacks that tries to manipulate our imaginations, manipulate our thoughts to skew what we think the world is and what we think the world means. And then we have reality. Then we have truth. Then we have what God says and how God defines us, who God is, and what that means for us in our lives. And we can go much more in depth on that if we need to, but I think those are first two important things to clarify when we mean how do we suffer more in imagination than in reality. We have to be able to define what is imagination and what is reality and truth.
Can you read that definition of reality again
Okay, 1 second. Let me pull it up real
for
quick.
me? I just
Got
want to make sure before I
You ready?
yeah.
Okay. The world or the state of things as they actually exist, as opposed to an idealistic or notional idea of them. The state or quality of having existence or substance.
So I'm curious, 'cause the definition starts with the world, right? And this we need a check here
Heresy check?
on this quote. Not a heresy check, but a quote. My kingdom is not of this world, not of this reality. I'm pretty sure there's a line on something of not of this reality.
Yep.
Right? Can someone
You want me to read it?
pull that for
My
me?
kingdom is not of this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders, but now my kingdom is from another place. That is John 18:36.
So if reality is things of this world, then we can say that, maybe of a different world or of a different reality, at least. The spiritual reality lies outside of the worldly reality that we experience today. Is that can we track that for a second? Again, this is all checking whatever, I'll renounce whatever. But if we disconnect those two things, right, and we say that we suffer more in our imagination than in our reality, we can look at that from a physical aspect and we can look at that from a spiritual aspect, right? And so I think that's my opening statement. I don't want to go any more in depth. I told Cole I was going to blow him up this podcast. So, yeah, that's all I'll say for now. But what do you think? Opening thoughts, Cole Bissett.
I'm kind of I'm intrigued by the two of y'all and how y'all are going to go about this, because it is it's an interesting conversation.
He's writing a lot. What are you writing?
Are you writing, or are you looking something up?
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, because how much does our imagination actually coincide with our reality? Like, how much value do we actually give our imagination, and what is healthy? Like, what is the Catholic Church's standpoint of a healthy imagination? Like, because we are encouraged to live out our dreams in the sense of like a purposeful sense, like live out our vocation and the calling that we want. And so in order to do that, we must pursue a dream of our imagination. And so I guess trying to find that balance is really important. But a topic that I always hear talked about is the battle of the mind, the internal struggle that we fight in ourselves, in our souls, in our heart, because I think it holds the most value when it comes to Christianity. Because the battle of our minds is, I would say, makes up 75% of our faith. Because yes, in order to exteriorly show
Mm.
our Christian faith, we first must be able to interiorly live it.
Mm.
Wow, that was actually really profound. That was sick. Fist bump.
I mean, I
myself.
wouldn't say profound. It was
I don't
a
know.
good
Sorry,
line.
that was a good line. So sorry. Give myself a pat on the back for that. But yes, in order to exteriorly live our Christian faith, we first must interiorly be at a good place with it. And so what does that look like? How can we control our imagination when it decides to wander, when it decides to fall into worry, when it decides to fall into anxiety? I remember listening to somebody at one point, and I can't remember who told me this originally, but it was like the moment that your brain starts to tell you that you should feel shame for something, and that you let that shame control you, is the moment the devil wins in that instance. And that's the same thing. It goes for every sin. And so like our imagination is where a lot of this struggle, this battle, and our faith is actually shown the most. It's where our resilience is tested. It's where our courage is shown. And so it's important to have self-mastery over your own imagination. And so I kind of want to ask you two, where is the overlap? What does it look like? What is a healthy imagination? How do we train our imagination to be more controlled and more self-mastered in a way that we can pursue God more?
This is going to be a very non-definitive answer from us as lay people, very
Yes, this is not
basic 21-year-old lay people out here.
What do we
So
believe?
do not, this is nowhere near dogmatic out here.
Yeah.
But my answer would be, I always try to tell people, like if I got a question from like my disciples or like someone close like that, about God gives you intuition, God gives you your own imagination, your own gifts, and to remember that He speaks through them. And so I think it's very important to remember that God can work and speak through all of this, and to always remember that. So say you have your imagination and you're sitting there in your imagination, and then it turns into worry or anxiety. Well, that's when we have to return to the reality of, well, God wants to give us rest. Like, that's what He says. And so instead of, I wouldn't want to harp on, oh my gosh, I'm worrying so much in my imagination. I would harp on the fact that, okay, if you are worrying in your imagination, that is a beautiful time to turn that into prayer. And so that might be scapegoating around a definitive answer, but it's what I got. When you have those moments in your imagination, that always to remember, imagination or reality, that God is always there, always trying to use those moments to reach you and to work through those.
There have been very few times in my life where I've been like praying and I've been like, yes, like with clarity, this like, oh, God's voice or something, right? And that's not like, I'm not mocking that. I'm just saying, like, there have been very few times in my life where I've been like, this is a clear answer to my definite question that I've asked, right? And so I think one of the most frustrating things to learn is that that kind of filtering. Like, there's helpful things and there's not helpful things. And you don't really, it's just kind of a vibe of what you know, right? So there's, the natural subconscious underflow of thoughts throughout your day, right? And everybody kind of has this, right? You'll be sitting and you'll be thinking about, whatever, right? You could be thinking about the podcast, you could be thinking about your test, you could be thinking about, dinner, whatever it is, right? And that's normal, right? I wouldn't say that's imagination so much as just like that's your undercurrent of thought. That's your subconscious, right? I think when it becomes that imagination is when like you're dwelling and you build, right? Consciously on those things. And so when you pick things out, right? When you pick things out. And in my imagination, like when I like am building like my life, or I'm building, my relationship with Caroline, or when I'm like imagining what school or work would be like, right? Things like that. I'm very intentionally picking them, pulling them, and like putting them into this little box, and kind of like building my little place, if you will. And so I think it's healthy, as much as you make it healthy. Obviously, like you said, there's got to be some like, if I'm imagining this thing and it's ungood, not good, untrue, not good, true, or beautiful, whatever, right? Then obviously that's not good, right? Like that's clear. But also, if I'm dwelling in my imagination, if that's where I live, right? Like I seek to do nothing of this world because I'm eternally focused on my interior thought and what everything about me looks like or feels like or is expected, right? Then that's problematic. Um and this is different than meditation or self-observation or any of these things, right? Because all those things, the key aspect is that you exit out of them, you re-enter the world, and you live those meditative ideas, you live those self-realizations out, right? And they impact your life, right? But if we spend this time in that imagination, there's no colored impact on our lives. There's nothing that's comes back to us and we say, yes, this was a lesson I learned from imagining my future life in my head. Because I'm just building something. There's no lesson to really be learned there. But I'm just simply creating nothing out of nothing. I'm not, I'm just dawdling. So it, it's healthy, right? Because obviously like that's how you goal set. That's how you like say, put up mentally where you want to be, but also there is a point at which it's, it's better to live in this world than your own.
Yeah. That reminds me, and shout out Miss Pangallo because she's gonna love that I'm saying this. But
Hey,
there
crazy
is
fool.
there is a movie that she really likes, and I recommended Nazaria over the summer called Imaginary Friend. IF, and I think
This one with Mark Wahlberg.
no, it's
Alright.
John Krasinski and Ryan Reynolds.
Yep, that's right.
And Steve Carell. Phenomenal movie and was very underrated. Did pretty poorly in box office, I believe. Like it just wasn't.
Yeah, it looks scary.
It was a phenomenal movie, very well done. And I remember the first time I watched it, and I immediately texted Nazaria. I was like, "You'll have to watch this movie." I was like, "It is like the first like children's movie that I've seen in a minute that actually shows like this really beautiful message." And I was like, it's incredible. And I was like, "You need to go watch it." And they watched it, and they had a great time. They thought it was amazing too. And I think we're talking about the imagination, and in that movie, the way that movie's run and the whole plot is around this kid and this father and their imaginations. His father, or is it his mother that has cancer? One of them has cancer. You don't remember? One of them has cancer, and so the daughter is trying to restore her imagination. Her father is trying to help her be a kid again because she's really struggling with it mentally. She's so focused on her mom, and in the worry, the space her mind is in, the battle that she has with her mind is making her. She's like, I gotta be an adult. I've got to be old right now because my mom's, in a hospital bed and I can't do anything about it. So I can't be a kid right now. And so her dad, the whole movie, is trying to help her realize that's not the case. Like, I need you to be a kid. That's what you're supposed to do. And it shows how much our imagination we let it have so much dominion over the way we run our lives. We do. And that's why it's important to have the self-mastery in it. And like you talked about, there is a healthy balance. Yes, we should have dreams. We should have aspirations and ambitions. But those aspirations, dreams, and ambitions are only worthy if they're acted on. And so sometimes we shouldn't. Yes, it's important to dream big. But sometimes if you're just dreaming big, then what's the point? If that's all you're doing is just dreaming big, then all you're doing is dreaming. And so the cool part about that movie is that the girl at the end of it, and spoiler alert, finds out about her imaginary friend. She finally realizes that he had been there the whole time. One of the guys who was Ryan Reynolds' character was actually her imaginary friend the whole time, and she had no clue. She thought he
Her
was a real
dad?
person. Nope.
Oh, okay.
It was just this guy that had kind of
Wow.
helped lead her and guide her in our lives. And I think it's kind of important because Ryan Reynolds in that movie, I'm not saying his character was perfectly like the sense of what Jesus would play, but our imaginary friend in our lives is God in our mind. And that's how she conquered and overcame the battle and the pressure she put on herself of trying to be an adult and her mother. And so a lot of that self-mastery for her came with just the realization and spending time with Jesus in the situation I'm talking about, but Ryan Reynolds' character, and realizing, yeah, I need to be a kid. I need to follow you. I need to be. And so that's what our faith should look like. And for me, in times of where I'm stuck in my head, and that's the mental battle that I'm going through, that's what I'm trying to get through my day. It's like, okay, the way to beat that and the way to overcome that is to go back to your imaginary friend. It's going back to God. And so I think that's where the two coincide is God isn't just imaginary. So when you're thinking about him and you're talking to him and you're praying with them, sure, you're talking to somebody you can't see. It's somebody some people would call imaginary, but in all actuality, he's actually a reality, and you have access 24/7.
So for our next essay, and on a different topic, I'm going to send you in a completely different direction
Here
with
we
this.
go.
So, feast day of Saint Scholastica. We're filming, recording on a Tuesday. It is February 10th. It's my brother's birthday. Shout out Grant. Happy 18th birthday. I want you to talk and discuss, try to decipher what I mean between the parallelism of suffering and joy in the physical reality and the spiritual reality, using Saint Scholastica as your hint.
Saint Alaska is not gonna help me whatsoever. So the hint is not quite worthy,
Yeah,
but
the hint's not
The
good.
hint ain't hitting,
No.
the
folks.
parallelism
Yeah, the parallelism,
between
suffering,
and joy
Yeah.
in the physical life
Yes.
and the spiritual life.
And the spiritual life. Yes.
Physical life.
And what I mean by that is the parallelism in the spiritual life, and then, as a separate thing, the parallelism in the physical life.
Okay. Well, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, go for
Think
it.
of an example of the parallelism. I'm gonna trip over that every time. It's gonna be funny.
Yeah, no.
Between the suffering of and physical, between suffering and joy, would it be you suffer through a workout for the joy of how you feel after and the joy of your body, growing hopefully stronger and better? Is that correct? As an example,
I'm going to take it a different direction, but I like that, yeah.
like, are we thinking about it the right way? Like, through suffering, we receive joy. Is that where you're going with this?
let me toss it over to Cole first. What do you think? What do you
gonna
think
lie.
about? What do you think about the physical? Physical. Let's stay with physical. Physical. Let's keep it physical right now.
I'm not gonna lie, I have absolutely no idea what you mean by this
Okay,
question.
cool.
So can you
Cool. Yeah. So
Like
trick question. Trick
you-
question. I don't think there's a lot of parallelism in the physical world between suffering and joy, because I think that the word suffering is like abysmal. Like suffering is not like what you're saying about like a workout and then like you get the endorphins, you get the happiness from it, right? And again, like notice my transitory change from joy
I was
to
gonna say
happiness, right? Because I'm not really joyous, right? I'm not deriving like my life's purpose from my workout, right? Maybe some people are. I would ask them to re-examine their life's purpose, but I think the main thing in life is that suffering, physical suffering, is anguish, is despair, is like what Jesus encountered in the garden of physical suffering, right? Like
Mhm.
that, like I know that like my life is about to end, or like there's no hope for me at all. Like that's suffering, right? And we try to seek alternatives, right? To get out of that suffering. For example, we talk about imaginary friend, right? This little girl whose mother's got cancer, right? Like that's suffering. She's seeking other alternatives to get out of that suffering because there's no joy that she can derive out of that, right? So she has to go into other alternatives, right? To lighten that suffering, right? And so I almost think that these two things don't coexist together in the physical realm, this suffering and the joy, right? Can you experience like pain and pleasure at the same time, right? Or as a result of, right? Sure, like a great workout, I'm happy after that.
You're gonna go run after this. That's not
Yeah.
gonna be very fun.
No, it's probably gonna be a little bit painful or a little bit uncomfortable, right? Yeah, sure. And I'm happy after that. I'm satisfied with what I've done. But again, if we can derive joy as like the joy, what joy is that essence of what we're called to do on earth, right? That's the joy of life, right? Then that's not, I'm not saying I'm joyful after that. However, I think that there's a heavy parallelism between suffering and joy in the spiritual realm. And why I bring up Saint Scholastica is that when she died, right? So she was brother and sister. She was Saint Benedict's sister. And so when she died, it said that they spent like 3 days in conversation of heaven and spiritual things together, right? Saint Scholastica knew she was close to death, so she begged Benedict to stay with her and talk with her. And so Benedict said, no, 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 whatever. And she prayed, and a giant storm came up that did not allow him to leave the monastery. And so for the next 3 days, they prayed and they talked about the faith together. And after that, even through all of this suffering, they said Saint Scholastica was like angelic. She was experiencing this beautiful joy because she knew that she was close to heaven, that she knew that, this thing that she was discussing with her brother was soon to come to fruition, right? And so I think, when we discuss the spiritual realm, that suffering runs very much parallel to the joy that we experience. And my follow-up question is, where is that derived from? Ooh.
From Jesus, maybe.
I
His,
would
direct
say
suffering leads to the greatest joy there is.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, so that's exactly what I want to say, right? Is like when we talk about the greatest suffering of all time, right? We go back to Jesus dying on the cross, where, he's not only experiencing the physical anguish of being crucified, but also the spiritual and mental anguish of every sin, future and past, ever being laid on him at that moment, right? Suffering that anguish, right? But yet at that moment, perfect bliss, perfect joy, right? Perfect dedication to his cause, the reason, the fulfillment of his life and of all our lives, really. And so that's that perfect parallel of those things almost being on the same line of this suffering is my joy. This suffering is no longer in close tandem to my joy, but I am joyous because of my suffering. And that doesn't exist in the physical realm. That exists in the spiritual reality, right? And so that's my point between the parallelisms, right, between those two things. They don't really coexist here, but they coexist in the spiritual reality. And it's why we get so many saints that are of the spiritual realm that people of the physical world say, I don't understand their life. I don't get it. Like, why would they do that? What happens? I forget if I was talking to y'all or I was talking to Thomas Case, shout out my boy, and he was talking about a video, and this guy was asking a atheist or a agnostic or something like this a question about Maximilian Kolbe. And the guy was a evolutionarian or something, and he said, what's the Catholic guy asked him, what's the evolutionary advantage to Maximilian Kolbe not only giving his life for another person that he didn't know, but being happy about it? And, there's the guy offered some explanation or whatever, right? Oh, well, he's increasing the chances for the species to survive. But the Catholic's main point was, no, like, there's no reason. It doesn't make worldly sense for him to make that sacrifice, but yet he does it, right? Because that's the spiritual joy through that suffering that we're called to attain. That joy for another human, that joy for our root cause, which is heaven. This is a really long spiel. I've been talking for a while. But I draw my point here of that's what we're called for. And especially good on a feast day of such a saint who experienced such joy and such suffering in her life, right? Of being reminded that, suffering is not just suffering, right? Sure, this world can have physical suffering. This world can have physical joy, whatever. But that spiritual reality calls us to a joyous suffering, and not just the suffering of this world, but one that reaches higher to the heavens, and ultimately to our goal of heaven.
With that, I think it's a good ending point, actually, to go over to our practical prayer practice.
That was long-winded. I apologize.
No, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
Ladies and gentlemen, the practical prayer practice of the week.
All right, so for this week, for our practical prayer practice, I'd ask you to do a discernment of your mind. See what state you're in at the end of the week. The very end of the week. Like, I don't want I mean, you could do it as a daily thing, but I want you to look back throughout the week and kind of see where you let the devil win, where you started to worry, where you started to be confused, where you started to feel shame. And instead, think about the ways you could have let God win in that situation. Think about ways you could have countered it, ways you could have turned that mental anguish, mental suffering into a heavenly joy with the Father. And so it's kind of just going to be a discernment just of where you're at, just where you are in your faith and how your life has been and the way you react to it. Any other little input on that, an explanation, or is that
I like it.
okay?
I like it.
Cool. With that being said, we are going to switch over to our Shepherd of the Week, and we have a good one for this week.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Shepherd of the Week.
So we've been on this path recently in this episode about talking about suffering, and ways that suffering, can be turned to joy and what that looks like spiritually. So over Christmas break, yeah, I actually talked to you guys about doing this last week, and then the Q&A episodes came up, so we haven't had a Shepherd of the Week. But there's this famous Catholic speaker. His name is Paul J. Kim, or PJK, as he short for. He is a rapper. He's got a song called "I'm Not a Rapper," but he can rap. It is not the greatest rap in the world, but it is interesting. But over Christmas break, him and his family probably experienced about some of the worst experiences of the holidays you could have. Their son got the flu, and it quickly became, I think the word is septic, or whatever it is. And within the span of 4 days, they spent New Year's Eve in the hospital, or Christmas Day. They spent Christmas Day in the hospital until New Year's, and then the day after New Year's, the beginning of the year, he passed away. And he was 4 years old. He has siblings. There's like 4 or 5 of them, and they all went to the funeral a couple days after New Year's. But seeing the way that they have received God in this time is so gracious and so beautiful, and there's so many graces that are being poured into that family right now. It's absolutely incredible. And so there's plenty of prayers. Actually, you can go online and look up. There is a prayer for Micah and asking for his intercession for us, because we believe he's resting with our Heavenly Father in heaven. And so we ask you to kind of look into that story, research it, and kind of see what graces they were able to glean out of it. It truly is really inspirational. Even Paul is going back to speaking. He actually had just had his first talk since it happened, and he talked about his son a lot, and there's prayer cards with a picture of his son and everything, and asking for him to pray for us because we believe his soul is alive and well, and so we're asking for his prayers on us. And so if you're looking for an inspirational story and ways to stand up in times of adversity and ways to turn that into joy, that family is doing it, at least externally, that I can tell, in the best way possible. And so if you're looking for somebody to look up to in moments of trouble and want to relate, there's your way to go. So Micah is his name, is the son's name. So please, Micah, we ask for your intercession this week as we go throughout our week. But any other little tidbits or final thoughts on this quote?
No tidbits, but a shameless plug. Yeah, sign up for Search Retreat if you're here at the University of Alabama, or if you're in Alabama at all. Search is a weekend-long retreat that is put on by students for students. You don't have to be Catholic, you don't have to be Christian, but it is a wonderful experience regardless of where you are in your faith. And I would encourage you to apply if you're interested. So reach out to us, or go look at the Bama Catholic Linktree, or if you're here at Alabama, there will be a QR code in the bulletin. There's all sorts of places that you can find it, or find me in the Savin Center, or find me anywhere, or find one of these guys and they'll find me, and we'll get you signed up. So yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to do that, you can do that. You can comment on any of the videos. You can reach out to one of us on Instagram if you would like to go to Search.
You can buy a T-shirt which one of our Lost Sheep podcast members still hasn't bought a T-shirt yet. I don't even know if I've seen Nazario in one of our T-shirts before.
Never.
Never. Isn't that crazy?
Not really.
You know? No, it's not crazy.
No. It's,
No.
it's
That's just
completely
your
up his
imagination.
alley.
Well, that's not the reality.
Yeah.
It's completely up his
Yeah,
alley.
it's an imaginary thing that I'm gonna see Nazario show up in a
Yeah.
Lost Sheep podcast T-shirt on one of our episodes.
It's only 70 days till you graduate. That's crazy. I just came back.
81.
Sorry, 81. Oh, never mind. All right,
Yeah,
that's
sorry.
completely reasonable.
Anyways, be aware. Not sure what the Lost Sheep podcast budget looks like as of this moment, but if it is God willing, we will have another giveaway at some point. So be aware of that. Evan is our finance guy over there, so he knows the numbers for us. I'm not sure what that looks like, but we shall see.
Embezzling.
After the yeah,
We're embezzling.
total
Got a wedding to
embezzlement
pay
here. Anyways, yeah, I encourage you this week to really discern your mind, discern, and including all of us, discern where we're at mentally, where our headspace is at, in the way that God is trying to communicate in that. Because the battle of our mind is the most important part about our faith, honestly. Like mentally, in order to show and believe that we are Christian, we have to win in our brain first. We have to win in our brain first. And so help yourself be in a state that you can fight the devil in your brain. Because we are soldiers going into war. Men, I know you can relate to this. We're soldiers going into war. We got to arm ourselves in order to go out there and actually fight. So arm yourselves. Make sure it's good armor. Make sure there's no holes, and work your way forward. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for listening to this week of the Lost Sheep Podcast. This is episode 79. God bless.